Are we in the studio?
Yes.
We are. We're in the control room.
Oh, this is nice. Why do we do this? Can you give me like what am I looking at? Give me like
Yeah.
a virtual tour here.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are sitting in the Grant Avennue Studio control room. This is the main console right there. The MCI JH500C. Kind of blanked there for a second. I've only said it 400,000 times. Some monitors and the mains, and then you can see out onto the live floor there. That's where you've got, basically, one of the great things about the studio here is that everybody can see each other with isolation, like even with acoustic isolation. So you can actually, I don't know how well it'll come across on the camera, but I'll take you for a walk out there if you'd like. But you've got a drum booth, you've got a live floor, and you've got like an amp booth or a kind of vocal booth, whatever you want it to be, and everybody can see each other. So we've got racks here, which are not on, and there's not a coffee cup sitting there. You didn't see that. Take you for a quick walk.
Yeah.
We've got sort of the front entrance way here, where we've got some nice shiny things on the walls.
That is nice.
And pictures of people who have been here over the years. Kind of some more of that as we go down. Where are you guys calling from?
We are in Toronto.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, just down the street.
Just down the street. That's right.
I actually just moved here from Toronto in August.
Okay.
Studio, yeah. So long time Torontonian. This is one of the ISO booths.
Yeah.
So we mainly use that for guitars. We had a little session yesterday, so we're still set up from that. I've got an array of pedals, a couple different cabinets, two mics, in the original Neumann M49B from the World War II era for anybody who wants to be super nerdy.
Wow.
We have, let's see, just some more guitar amps. We have the Johnny Cash brick here. It's the black brick, which was colored in during the Johnny Cash session because the blue apparently clashed with his scarf, and so we haven't we haven't cleaned it. It's staying like that forever. We've got the piano here, the Yamaha C7. This is from the early days, from the Lanois days, and I'm sure you can't see it on the screen, but there's chips on the keys, and those are from Brian Eno playing it with hammers.
So, of course.
Of course, right? He also broke a knob on the console in the control room. And every time I use that channel, Brian Eno. This is the drum room. We normally leave the kit set up and mic'd. Again, there was a session yesterday and the guy brought his own cymbals, so it's kind of torn down at the moment. But that was one of the Lanois philosophies back in the day, was having the idea of house sound. So we're kind of reinstating that idea of house sound. Basically is the idea of having everything set up and ready to go at all times so that you can just plug in and let, when inspiration strikes, you're not having to mess around with cables and, oh, let me hook this up, let me hook that up. If somebody wants to come in, they want to use the house kit's mic'd up, let's go, house sound, right?
Nice.
So, yeah, so...
This is great. Thanks for the tour.
Yeah, no problem. I would have cleaned up a little bit more if I'd known doing this, but hey, work in progress, man, you know.
That is fine. Okay, we're going upstairs now.
We're going upstairs, yeah. Some more stuff on the walls there. One of my personal favorites, some Ani DeFranco there.
Okay.
So yeah, she did 2 records here.
That's a beautiful color.
We've got some Daniel Lanois and some Brian Eno on the wall here.
Yeah.
So
now, has Daniel come by recently?
We haven't seen him.
Okay.
We have seen Mark Howard and David Bottrell have both been by, who were both apprentices of Daniel's and went on to do their own, have their own great careers. David's actually a friend of mine from previously, so it was kind of cool when this all happened.
Yeah.
It kind because this is where he cut his teeth, right? So
Mark is famous for like finding sounds and setting up interesting setups
yeah,
in other homes. What did he think of the setup now?
yeah, he liked it. We hadn't changed much actually. When he came by, it was actually spontaneous. We weren't expecting him. We were getting ready for an open house. It was early days. We hadn't really done much. It pretty much looked the same. And he just showed up. Mike was out in the parking lot raking leaves, and Mark Howard pulled up. He happened to be in town. He was looking for a place to do a book signing for the book, his latest book.
Yeah, was it the coffee table book, the photo album book?
Yeah. Recording icons and creative spaces.
Yeah.
He was just started chatting with us, and we asked if he could do the book signing here, so we did.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's very cool. So this is one of our additions to the place. This used to be an office, but is now an artist lounge. So we've got kind of just instruments hanging out. We've got PlayStation and books and magazines, and just kind of a place for artists to come and unwind and just if they're sick of listening to a snare drum being tweaked for a half an hour, they can come up here and hang out and write or do whatever.
Okay.
So this is Doug Smith.
Hey,
he's our newest addition to the team. He's currently changing guitar strings and doing some setups.
Stuff.
Very important work. Yes. Absolutely. And we've got Wallow guitars up here. So
wow.
And some more over here. This Martin is tuned to Nashville tuning, which means the three bottom strings, the E, A, and D, are actually tuned an octave higher than normal. So when you play it, it's got this weird kind of like light, kind of shimmery sound. And
nice.
That was a Gordon. Yeah, and that was a Gordon Lightfoot request. So Gord did his last 4 albums here, and he had specifically, had requested that guitar was set up in that configuration. So that's one of those things like the Johnny Cash brick. That's always going to stay like that.
Yeah.
Right. That's the Gord guitar. So
nice.
So this is Studio B. I was just up here doing some work, so it's a little bit messy, but we've got a couple of mics, Neumann and a Shure, and we've just basically got a workstation here with a few high-end pieces of gear, and it's more of a like a mixing and an editing suite. So nowadays a lot of mixes are done in the box. So we'll do a lot of that kind of work up here, and it also serves as a a more affordable option for people who don't need or can't afford to work in the main room downstairs. Nice. And we also rent that out to independent producers who want to come in and just bring a laptop or bring their files and do some work. So
pretty cool. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for the tour.
My pleasure. Oh, signed picture of Bono. We're not exactly sure the story behind that one, but
okay.
There's a lot of stuff here that it's a matter of figuring out what the story is. So there's been a lot of detective, Downchild, and then we've got, this is kind of the entrance area where you've got 3 out of 4 of the Gordon Lightfoot records that were done here. There's a U2 Unforgettable Fire plaque. Some strings were recorded here.
Okay.
Crash Test Dummies, which Bob Doige worked on.
All right. Like that.
McLaughlin. Yeah, and my personal favorite, we have about 4 Raffi albums that Daniel.
You're kidding me.
I know, right? Yeah, so that was a real trip, finding out that he did Raffi on here. No.
Flashback to our childhood.
Yeah, indeed. So nice. Hey, well, and here's Mike.
Here you go.
I'm Mike. I'm Mike Bruce. I'm one of the owners of Grant Avennue Studio, one of the new owners of Grant Avennue Studio, historic music studio in Hamilton, Ontario.
And I'm Andrew Lauzon. I'm the head engineer and producer here at Grant Avennue Studio. And welcome to the music.
listen, first of all, thanks for the tour. That was fantastic. Wasn't expecting it, so thank you so much for that. I've got a bunch of questions in my head. Last night we're watching the Grammys. We're watching all these fantastic artists, and it was really one of the cool things was there was a lot of I'm a huge Joni Mitchell fan, and I was this close to tearing up watching her perform. I'm not expecting her to hit all the notes from her original, but right at the end, she was about to come out of that chair, and she was just belting it. Fantastic. Billy Joel, I thought his new song, sounds so classic Billy Joel. And then you had some of the new stars as well. And so my first question is, we hear a lot of to talk about these musicians, these artists making stuff at home. Pro Tools, people have been using that for many years now. We've had Mark Howard on our show a couple of times, telling us stories about just going down to like Louisiana and finding a house and setting up the studios there, and having everybody come in and record. And then obviously, you got the Grant Avennue Studio. And I guess, Mike, the question is to you, because, you're one of the guys that, said, I want to be, I'll participate in this project. I'll be one of the owners.
Mhm.
What is it about the studio? What is it about music today, the industry, that you thought, this is what I want to do? This is where I want to, put some of my time and some of my resources.
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, buying a music studio in 2023, maybe not the soundest investment, but it comes from a lifelong passion, and we all came up as musicians, and I kind of found my way into film and television for the longest time, and now it cut to 20 years later, and I have a son who's 19, and he was just finishing high school, and wants to he's been kind of like a bedroom producer for the last 6 years, and it all culminated in a time when we were thinking about post-secondary education. He checked out all the music schools like Fanshawe and OEArt and all these, and just at the exact same time, a guy that I work with in the film industry, he was like, listen, I'm a part of this grant thing, and Bob Deutsch, who was kind of the originators with the Lanois brothers, and then took over from them, ran it for the past 40 years. He's like, it's kind of time, like I want to start winding down and looking for somebody to take over. So it all just kind of came together, and it was like, okay, well, instead of spending the money on going to post-secondary education, why don't I call my good friend Andrew, who's a genius and a genius behind the board, and we'll get into this studio, and I'll get Andrew to mentor Tyler, and we all get to this amazing playground sort of thing, and we get to keep the lights on in a historic studio. Like it's we're pretty sure that we've done the research, and we think it's now the oldest consistently run studio in Canada.
Sure, yeah.
So it's what I mean. There's just a lot to it. So that's it was because of all that. So like the idea is if we can keep the lights on and save this place and get to do what we need to do, and everybody fulfills their creative outlets, then that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and I guess with your background, Mike, in TV and everything else, there's opportunities. It's not just a place for bands to come and record. You could do like a bunch of stuff, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Out of here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we want to get into live streaming and podcasting and all that sort of thing, and there's been talks about potentially putting together a documentary on this place, and just Hamilton in general, and the music history sort of things. So and then if we can get into some ADR work and maybe some scoring and stuff like that, and it all kind of ties together. And again, 2023, you kind of got to do whatever you can to get dollars through the door just to stay alive.
Absolutely. How I don't know, like was a bunch of stuff redone? There's just amazing along the wall behind you guys going up the staircase. gold records, albums, just people that have impacted music, not just in Canada, but globally as well. How does it, when you come in every day to work, Andrew, you know, is it, yeah, I know these guys. Yeah, it's the same record you see over and over again. But like maybe the first time you walked through, like, did it hit you like, oh shit, we're gonna work here now?
Still does, absolutely. And it, of course, you go somewhere every day and you get used to it. This is the environment, but it's still, I still often at the end of the day when I'm just kind of kicking back and unwinding, I'll just look around and, the sense of awe has not been lost on me. It hasn't. I mean, it's obviously not as intense and, crazy as it was at first, but it still hits me on a regular basis. And I think of, it's still kind of sinking in that we're a part of this now, because this is much bigger than we are, or anybody for that matter. And the fact that we now fit into the history of this place in so far a very small part, and hopefully over time in in larger part.
It hits you at the weirdest time. Like you'll be sitting here just kind of looking around, like, after a long day or, whatever the case is. And then you think of a Canadian band or like it's anything. It's like, oh my God, like those guys recorded here. And it kind of comes over you again and again and again. You know what I mean? It's like the history is just so rich and deep and so connected, like you said, globally. It's like it's a little mind-blowing. So every now and then, you just get these little twinges of like, oh my God, like that's where Johnny Cash stood, you know what I mean? Like and even Canadian bands like the Spoons recorded an album here, and like it's just it's crazy.
And you get the history runs so deep too. Like you come in and there's obviously, you talk to Bob and Amy King, who was the engineer here with Bob for the last 20 years, and they of course there's so much that they could were able to tell us about the place. But then you go down in the basement and you see all these tapes and you're like, well, they never told us about that. And then you get people who come in who have history here. We talked about David Bottrell earlier, and he was in, maybe about a month ago, and he hadn't been here in years. And you could tell he just went down a wormhole, and every room we walked into, he had just so many stories, so many of which we hadn't heard before.
A lot of memories.
So it's and so many people have come through who all have their own unique experiences with the place, and it's always so cool to hear that, because so much, and just being in Hamilton now, meeting people who are connected with this place, like so many people in the scene are. It's really cool.
That's absolutely amazing. When you showed me, Andrew, that M42 mic, it sort of I don't know why, but it sort of reminded me of, Neil Young is on this mission to improve the sound that we hear on through streaming through our phones, or when a CD is put out, or vinyl. He says, I want people to hear what it sounded like inside the studio when we were making it. And the question I have, Andrew, is, you got that mic, you got the console behind you that you said, Brian Eno's got a button there that he messed up, and you showed me the piano that is scuffed up, and in today's society, generally, you it's like, this is broken, let me throw it away, But it seems that in music, in sort of places, studios like yours, it doesn't matter how old this equipment is. There's a sound that is able to come through that almost can't be replicated anywhere else. And for those people,
best artist a little bit broken.
Right. Hey, isn't the best gear?
That's true.
But you just described the concept of house sound, what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Like for those people that are listening to the show, like explain what is house sound, and why are like the board behind you that I don't know how old it is, but why things like these, like the World War II mic, nobody would think, let's go to Long and McQuaid to get a new one. Like, what is it about these these unique pieces of equipment that why are they so important? Why are they so interesting? And what do they do for the sound?
I think it's twofold. I mean, I think there's a sound to vintage gear, like especially if it's a really nice piece of vintage gear, like a original Neumann M49B, which is considered by many to be the best vocal mic of all time, which is,
Wow.
there's not really one best vocal mic of all time, but it's certainly on people's top, near the top of most people's lists. And you know, this console goes back to the early 80s, and it has a sound. It has a, you know, people describe the warm sound of analog and whatnot. And certainly old gear can impart a unique sonic signature. With consoles in particular, every channel sounds a little bit different, right? And so you can get plugins, and I'm not knocking. I think what modern recording technology could do is incredible, and I use it every day. But when you get a channel strip, a certain preamp that you're emulating on the computer, it doesn't have that unpredictable variability that each different channel on the board does. Maybe because one of the channels is starting to fail and it's starting to crackle a little bit. Funny story we had when Mark Howard was in here after he did his book signing. He was working with an artist in Hamilton, Martin Verral. Apologize if I didn't say that right. I think it's Verral, right?
I think it's Verral, but
Martin Verral, yeah. Very cool, off the wall, like really, you know, quirky
Tom Waitsy
singer-songwriter.
Nick Cave.
Keep an eye out for him for sure. But so he brought Martin in and a few different people, and he called everything up on the board. And so Mark was you know, I was assisting him. He was engineering, and what did he say? He said, we kind of got to the end of the allotted time, and he said, you know, do you have time for one more song? Can we push it a little bit? And I said, well, I said, if you tell me, because I'd noticed the bass had this gnarly distortion on it, and it was really out of character with the music because it was like acoustic stuff, and it had this really fuzzy, heavy bass tone. And I thought, it's out of character, but it's so cool. It was so unique, and it stuck out. And he said, can we do one more song? And I said, well, yeah, but only if you tell me how you got that bass sound. And he looks at me and he says, you tell me. It's your board. It sounds clean when I listen to it, but your board is distorting the shit out of it. And so he'd had the preamp turned up, and it sounded like just a really cool fuzz pedal. You know. And so that particular preamp just distorted a little, you know, at a lower level than you expected it to, and it just had that sound. So
that's awesome.
So I think there's just the sound of gear, there's the sound of vintage gear, but there's also like the experience of it. And I think that goes a long way. You know, when I first started working out of here, I came from, you know, like most people, I had over the years worked in studios. Typically I would bring my own engineer or use the house engineer. And the majority of what I would do would be in the box on the software. So to come in here, I was already familiar with a lot of the gear, but the workflow for me is mouse and keyboard, like most people.
Yeah.
The tactile experience of pushing faders up, and instead of looking at a menu for a plugin, you patch something on the patch bay and then reach over and turn the knob. That tactile experience changes everything.
Yeah.
To me, it's so much more creative. And I think even though the artists in here are not doing the engineering part, their interaction with the gear, I think, is going to have a similar effect. Like it just fosters creativity. It just encourages it, because you're not just staring at a screen.
It somehow feels a level up.
Yeah. And it somehow feels more like you're more connected to what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, because as much as, again, I think modern technologies, like what computers can do, is just incredible today. Yeah. But it's all on the screen.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sterile in that way. You know?
Yeah.
So I think the interaction, and of course
it's a very subjective thing as well, right? But for somebody who hasn't experienced a real studio with you know, some classic analog gear, it's like
Yeah.
You know, that I guess that's where it kind of separates, you know,
Mhm.
yeah, I'll leave it at
That's
that.
no, that's fantastic. Does
And
Hamilton have that open door program in the summer for like a
Yeah.
Yeah.
weekend? Do you guys participate in that at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would
It's
be
an
really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to say, just to add to that too, I think there's a third level. You know, there's the sound of the gear, there's the experience of using the gear, but also in a place like this, it has I just think it's a creative environment. You just walk in here and you just want to be
100%.
creative.
Yeah.
But you add to that the history and the lore and the, you know, people come in here and they really just get caught up in being here and being in the experience. And,
Yeah.
you know, I do every day.
Yeah.
I you know, but especially people who it's their first time here, or you know, they don't come very often, or whatever it is, they just get caught up in how cool it is to be in a place with so much history, and
Yeah.
you know, it's
I could just
Yeah.
imagine being inspired as a musician coming in there and you just walk by some of the photos and stuff and you said, oh shit,
yeah,
that person, cut that record here or they recorded some songs here, and you
yeah,
pick up one of your house guitars and yeah, I can just imagine.
Well, that's the thing too. It's not just about preserving history, it's about continuing history. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Making our own history. And like, we don't want to just let it kind of fall off into story time. Like this is a real living place with tons of vibe and character, and it's like all the stories are true, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it doesn't have to end there. It's like, we can just keep going and be the next generation of stories.
mhm.
That is awesome. Mike, Andrew, this has been fantastic. Thanks so much for your time. One last question. Don't know if you're able to say, but who are some of the artists that are coming in that you're excited to work with? Well, what can we as music fans get excited to see what comes out of the studio there?
Well, I think you're gonna have to just wait and see.
There's a lot of unknown talent that should be known and will be known in
Yeah.
Hamilton. Hamilton's
Yeah.
a bit of a hotbed for some really freakishly talented people. So
Yeah.
I think the story is yet to be written.
Mhm.
Nice. That is awesome. My guests have been Mike Bruce and Andrew Lauzon.
Lauzon.
Lauzon. Andrew Lauzon.
You
Actually,
say
it's
this.
probably closer to the actual francophone.
Grant Avennue Studio in
Lauzon.
Hamilton.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. This has been a blast.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Thanks for having us.